He thought it was just another wreck, just another day picking through metal and silence on a dead moon. But buried in the rubble was a girl with silver skin, and a secret powerful enough to reshape the galaxy, hunted by inquisitors, carrying a living crown filled with ancient voices she shouldn't have survived. He shouldn't have helped her. But now they're both marked by something no empire can control, and as ships close in, one truth burns brighter than all. The crown has chosen humanity, and it doesn't want rulers. It wants revolution. If you're new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now, let's move to this wonderful story. Dranvelen was not a hero. Not anymore. Not since the war ended and the stars stopped calling his name. Now he lived among broken ships and dead signals, alone on a forgotten salvage moon called Kinara 7. It was a cold place, dry and lifeless, where no one came unless they had no other choice. For Dran, that was perfect. He didn't want to be found. He didn't want to remember. On this day, the sky was a flat gray and the wind was sharp enough to cut through his coat. He moved quietly across the rusted plains, his scanner in one hand, looking for scrap or anything valuable. Most days he found nothing but twisted metal and memories. But today, something strange beeped on his scanner, a fresh signal. Recent. Not from a crash months ago, but days, maybe hours. He followed the signal to a ravine where a ship had fallen, hard. The dirt around it was torn in long scars, smoke still curling from the engines. It was alien, not human, design but not entirely unfamiliar either. It had smooth black armor, glowing veins across its surface and deep grooves like ribs running down its sides. Something about it felt wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. Dran climbed through the wreckage slowly. He expected to find power cells, maybe a working panel or two. But as he stepped over a bent support beam, he froze. There, between the broken hull plates and tangled wires, was a body. Not a corpse. Not exactly. It was a girl. Maybe 17 or 18, though alien features made it hard to tell. Her skin was pale, almost silver blue, and her hair floated softly around her face like it had never known gravity. She wore a suit of armor, cracked, burned, and covered in ash. A strange necklace glowed faintly on her chest, a small orb of pulsing light that seemed alive. For a moment, Dran did nothing. He just stared. She looked fragile, like she would vanish if the wind blew too hard. He took a step back, about to leave. He didn't want trouble. He didn't want anything. But then she moved, just a twitch. Her chest rose. Barely breathing. Still alive. Dran dropped his pack and knelt beside her. Her skin was cold. Her pulse was weak. Her body shook from shock. She was dying. And yet, something about her held on. He looked around. No life signs on his scanner. No ships in the sky. No one else coming. He picked her up carefully as if she might break in his arms and carried her back to his shelter. His camp was a cave carved into the side of a canyon. It was dark, dry, and filled with old human tech. Tools, rations, a small heater, and one working medical pod. He laid her inside it, activated the pod, and watched as it hummed to life. It scanned her body, stabilized her vitals, and wrapped her in soft light. She didn't wake. Hours passed. Dran sat near the pod, watching her chest rise and fall, listening to the machine beep. Her necklace still glowed. It never faded. It was watching him. He couldn't explain it, but that's how it felt. Later, he connected to the DeepNet. His old military link still worked, hidden behind layers of encryption. He traced the ship's ID code, searched the crash logs, and checked bounty networks. What he found made his blood run cold. Subject, Salivore status, wanted charges, treason, regicide, unlawful crown activation reward, 4 million credits, dead or alive. Dran leaned back, hands on his face. The girl in his pod wasn't just some survivor. She was a fugitive, a traitor. And not just any traitor. She had stolen something called the crown. The records didn't explain what that meant, but the price on her head was clear. If he turned her in, he'd be rich beyond anything he'd ever imagined. He looked at her again. She didn't look like a killer. She looked like someone lost, someone running from something terrible. But maybe that was the trick. He didn't get long to think. His console beeped again. New signal. 3 ships, inbound, stealth class. He cursed and powered down the system. Those weren't bounty hunters. They were inquisitors. The silent death, squads of the High Council. The kind of people who didn't take prisoners. The kind who erased people, not arrested them. Dran stood, heart racing. He checked his rifle. It was old, but it worked. He looked at the pod. He had a choice. He could leave her, let them take her, pretend none of this ever happened. Or he could fight. He stared at her face, peaceful, unaware. He whispered, "You better be worth it." He dragged the pod deeper into the cave, into an old storage room built like a bunker. The lights flickered. He shut them off, turned down the heat, made it look like no one had been here in years. Then he crouched in the dark and waited. Above him, the cave shook. Boots stomped on gravel. Voices spoke in a language he didn't understand. They were close. Too close. Then, in the darkness beside him, the girl moved again. Her eyes opened, pale blue, glowing faint in the dark. Her lips moved. No sound. Then a whisper. "Where am I?" Dran stayed still. "Somewhere safe. For now." "You're human," she said. "Last I checked." "Why did you help me?" He didn't answer right away. "You looked like you needed it." Her hand touched her necklace. It pulsed brighter. "You shouldn't have. They'll kill you." He smiled bitterly. "I figured." Her voice trembled. "I didn't ask for this. It chose me. I didn't want it." "What chose you?" Her eyes met his. The crown. And that's when everything changed. Dran sat in silence, his back against the cold stone wall, his rifle resting across his knees. The girl, Celie, lay inside the medical pod, her eyes half open now, glowing faintly in the dark. Outside, the sound of footsteps had faded, but he didn't believe the danger was gone. Inquisitors never left without what they came for. Celie moved again, her voice barely louder than a breath. "They're not just hunting me," she said. "They want the crown." Dran's fingers tightened on the rifle. "You said it chose you. What does that mean?" She looked at him, confused for a moment, like she was still waking from a long dream. "The crown isn't just a symbol. It's alive. Old. Very old. It holds memories, thoughts, the minds of rulers who came before, all of them. It speaks. It remembers." "And now it's in your head?" Dran asked. "Not just mine," she whispered. "It's looking for something. Someone. Balance." Dran raised an eyebrow. "Balance sounds like something people say when they want control." Celie shook her head slowly. "No, it doesn't want control. It wants to stop what's coming." Dran stood and paced, the silence around them pressing in. "They said you killed a king, that you stole it." "I didn't kill him," she said. "They did. The council. I only ran, and the crown followed. It found me," she said, placing her hand over her heart. "It bonded with me, not because of blood or titles, because I was there, because I didn't run from what it showed me." Dran turned, staring at her. "And now it's showing you me?" Celie blinked. "Yes, it reached out when I was unconscious. It saw what you did, how you carried me, how you didn't leave me. It saw your past, your pain." He looked away. "I don't need it in my head." "It's not reading you, like a book," she said softly. "It's listening, watching." Dran sighed, lowering his rifle. "Great. So now I've got a ghost crown whispering about my life choices." Celie smiled faintly. "It doesn't judge. It just wants to understand. It remembers so much war, so much blood. It's tired. Then why doesn't it shut down, he asked. Because somewhere in all the memories, she said, it found something new, something human. Dran stared at her. You really think it cares about humans? I don't think it ever did before, she said. But now it does. Before Dran could reply, his scanner lit up again. Faint signals. Movement. Nearby. He swore under his breath. They're still out there. Saley sat up slightly, wincing. They won't stop until they get it. Dran helped her stand. Then, we keep moving. He led her through a side tunnel deeper into the mountain. It was narrow and steep, an old mining shaft long abandoned. The air was cold, thin and heavy with dust. They didn't speak for a while. There wasn't time. After what felt like an hour, they reached an old chamber, once used to store equipment, now just a shadow-filled box of metal crates and silence. Dran checked the corners, powered on a small lantern, and turned to Seely. You need to rest, he said. No time, she whispered. You won't help anyone if you collapse. She sat, breathing hard, her hands shaking. I feel them, the voices, the crown's memories, they're louder now. Dran frowned. What are they saying? Some are scared, others are angry. They argue. Fight. It's like carrying a room, full of broken leaders in my mind. Sounds awful. Sometimes, she said. But sometimes they're kind. They remember joy, peace, the feeling of holding a child or planting trees. Dran sat across from her. What does it want from me? She looked up at him. Not obedience, not loyalty, just truth. It's trying to find a new way to lead, not by ruling from above, but by walking beside. Dran leaned back. Never thought I'd be the type a crown would pick. You're not, she said. You're the type it needs. He looked at her sharply. What's that supposed to mean? You've lost, she said. You've broken. You've seen what power does when it's unchecked. You don't want to lead. That's why it's watching. He didn't reply. Then the ground trembled. A low hum filled the chamber. Dran stood instantly, weapon ready. We have company. Saley's hand clutched his arm. They're close. We can't. Stay here, he said. She nodded, but her legs shook. There's a place, she said. Not far, a vault. It's where the crown came from. Maybe it can help. Dran hesitated. You're asking me to walk into the heart of this thing. No, she said. I'm asking you to trust me. His jaw tightened. The sound of boots echoed from the tunnel behind them. Fine, he said. Lead the way. They moved quickly, the path twisting through tunnels and old mining shafts. Saeli's breathing grew labored, but she pressed forward. The crown's light pulsed from her necklace, growing stronger with every step. Finally, they reached a hidden door carved into the stone. Ancient symbols covered it. Some human, some alien, some that looked like both. Dran stared. What is this place? A memory, she said. The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside, a warm light glowed. Walls of crystal and metal, humming with quiet energy. As they stepped in, the door sealed behind them. Welcome, a voice said. Not from either of them. Dran turned, weapon up, but no one was there. Who said that? Not who, Saley whispered. What? The crown was speaking, and it remembered everything. The room was alive. Dran stepped forward carefully, his boots making no sound on the strange glowing floor. The walls around them pulsed with shifting lights, soft colors moving like waves. Symbols drifted across the surface, changing with every glance. Some looked like letters, others like stars, but none of them made sense to him. Saley stood in the center of the chamber. Her necklace glowed brighter now, matching the rhythm of the walls. She seemed calm, but her eyes told another story. She was afraid even if she tried not to show it. What is this place? Dran asked, keeping his voice low. A vault, she replied. One of the oldest. The crown's first memory was stored here before it ever chose a ruler. Dran looked around. So this is where it began? No, she said softly. This is where it learned. The light in the room shifted suddenly. The floor beneath them turned dark, the walls rippled. Then the fire came, not real fire, memory fire. It rose around them in slow, swirling shapes. Orange and blue flickering like ghosts. Each flame held a moment. A face, a voice. Kings shouting orders, queens whispering warnings, battles, victories, betrayals. A sea of history, burning quietly. All around them, Dran froze. "What is this, the trial?" Saley whispered. "It wants to see who we are." The fire moved faster now. The world shifted. One moment, Dran stood in the vault. The next, he was somewhere else. He stood in a ruined city, under a gray sky. Smoke filled the air. Buildings burned in the distance. Screams echoed through the empty streets. He knew this place. It was Mars Delta 9, the last battlefield he had ever seen, the place where he lost everything. Dran turned in circles, breathing hard. He saw them, his old unit, faces he hadn't seen in years, their armor broken, their eyes full of fear. They looked at him like they expected something. A voice came from behind, low and calm. "You left them." He spun. A figure stood there, tall, armored in black, face hidden behind a smooth helmet. "You let them die," the voice said again. Dran stepped back. "I didn't have a choice. We were surrounded." The figure tilted its head. "You chose to survive." Dran's fists clenched. "I tried to save them." "But you didn't." The fire rose higher. The memories swirled faster. Dran dropped to his knees. The guilt, the pain, it pressed down on him like a weight. The voices of his lost friends echoed around him, calling his name. "Dran, why didn't you come back? We waited. We believed in you. We died alone." He wanted to scream, to run, to hide, but he couldn't. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a mirror. "Stop," he whispered. No one answered. Then a light broke through the smoke. A hand reached out. Small. Familiar. Saley. She stood beside him now, her eyes glowing softly. "You carry more than guilt," she said. "You carry their names. You remember them. That matters." Dran looked at her, his breath shaky. "Why is it doing this?" "It doesn't want perfect," she said. "It wants truth." The fire calmed. The city faded. They were back in the vault. Dran fell to the floor, sweat on his face. His hands shook, but his eyes were clear. "What did you see?" he asked. Saley sat beside him. Her voice was quiet. "I saw my family. Before, the council betrayed us. I saw how blind we were, how we ignored suffering, how power made us deaf." She took a deep breath. "I hated them, but they were me. And that scared me." Dran looked at her closely. "You passed too." She gave a small nod. "Barely." Then, their arms began to glow. Faint lines appeared. Patterns, soft and silver, crawling across their skin like vines. Not painful, not burning, just there. Dran stared. "What is this?" Saley answered, but it wasn't only her voice. It was layered, hers and another, voices of the crown. "You are not one, you are two, not ruler and servant. Balance." The light in the chamber brightened. The fire disappeared. The walls showed something new. Not war, not thrones, a path, stars, voices, people of every kind standing together. Dran stood slowly. His body felt different, lighter and heavier at the same time. The crown was in him now too, not fully, but enough. He looked at Saley. She nodded. "It chose us both." He gave a weak smile. "So what now?" A voice spoke from the wall, mechanical but warm. "They are coming." Dran's smile vanished. "The Inquisitors." "They know," Saley said. "They felt the trial begin." Dran walked to the exit. "Then we leave. We warn the others. We fight." She followed him. "You're not afraid anymore." "I am," he said. "But now I know who I am, and the crown does too. Together they stepped out into the dark tunnel. Behind them the vault sealed shut. Ahead, war waited, but so did something else. Hope. The stars above were quiet, but silence meant nothing anymore. Dran Valen stood on the deck of an old human freighter named the Ember Path. It had once been a cargo hauler, now patched with stolen armor and hidden weapons. The ship drifted near the edge of a broken planet, hidden behind thick debris fields that blocked most sensors. Below them, shadows of enemy cruisers moved like hunters in the dark. Inside the command bay, Saeli Vor leaned over the navigation table. Her necklace still glowed, though softer now. The crown was resting, but it had not stopped listening. She could feel its presence like a second heartbeat. "They'll hit us soon," Dran said. "I know," she answered. They didn't need more words. The trial had changed them both. Now they shared the weight, the memories, the whispers. They weren't rulers. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. The comms crackled. A voice came through, deep and sharp. "This is Captain Joros, Outpost 7. Your signal's been traced. Inquisitor fleet inbound. You have less than 10 minutes." Dran pressed the comm. "Copy that. Prepare to move. Send the warning to all rebel channels." The message had already gone out, but not everyone would believe it. Most still saw the crown as a weapon. Others feared it would fall into the wrong hands again. But some had listened, and those who did were coming. Within minutes, ships began to arrive. Fast ones, broken ones, fighters with scratched paint and mismatched parts, pilots who wore no flag, crews made of outcasts, soldiers, healers, and smugglers. They answered the call not because they trusted the crown, but because they trusted each other. On the main screen, the Inquisitor fleet appeared. Black ships with sharp wings and burning engines. They moved in silence like wolves in the dark. Drani turned to Saeli. "We have one chance." She nodded. "We show them what the crown really chose." The fleet spread out. The Ember Path led the first line, followed by a pair of rebel corvettes. The plan was simple. Get inside the enemy flagship, reach the control core, and upload the memory of the trial. Let the galaxy see what really happened. Let them see the truth. As the battle began, space lit up with fire. Engines roared. Turrets fired. Shield flares painted the stars in blue and gold. Dran flew with steady hands. He wasn't the best pilot, but he didn't need to be. The ship moved like it understood, dodging blasts, weaving through wreckage. The crown was helping, guiding. Behind him, Saeli prepared the memory key, a crystal device connected to her necklace, glowing brighter by the second. "When we reach the core," she said, "we plug this in, no matter what." Dran glanced at her. "You sure this will work?" "No," she said. "But it's the only way." They reached the enemy flagship, a giant ship shaped like a blade, silent and deadly. Its surface shimmered with dark energy. It fired, missing by inches. The Ember Path spun, engines howling, and crashed into the docking bay. Metal screamed. Lights flickered. The ship slammed to a stop. Dran kicked the hatch open. Saeli jumped out behind him, the memory key in her hands. Two rebels followed, a sharpshooter named Keelan and a mechanic called Brava. They moved fast, cutting through guards and drones, pushing toward the heart of the ship. Inside, the halls were cold and silent. They passed cells filled with prisoners, labs full of failed experiments, the crown whispered in Saeli's mind. Pain, fear, forgotten voices, all trapped here. "We have to hurry," she said. They reached the core room, a tall chamber glowing with blue light. In the center, a machine pulsed, alive, angry, and waiting. "This is it," Dran said. As they stepped forward, the floor shook. A figure dropped from above, an Inquisitor, commander clad in dark armor, eyes like burning coal. "You don't belong here," the voice said. Dran raised his weapon. "We're not here to ask." The fight was quick but brutal. Keelan was injured, dragged back by Brava. Saeli ran for the console while Dran held the commander back. Blows echoed in the chamber. Fire and sparks filled the air. At last, Saeli reached the core. She pressed the memory key into the slot. Light exploded from the console. The Crown's memories surged through the ship, pouring into its systems. Outside, every screen, every comms link, every broadcast channel lit up, and the galaxy they saw the trial, they saw Dran's pain, Sally's truth, the lies of the Council, the voice of the Crown choosing not power but balance. The Inquisitor froze. The whole ship shook. Sally looked at Dran, eyes wide. "It's working." "Then let's go," he shouted. They ran. Moments later, the ship exploded. The ember path escaped with smoke trailing from its hull. Behind them, the enemy flagship vanished in a flash of light. In every corner of the galaxy, people watched. Not leaders, not soldiers, just people. They saw a man who had lost everything stand for something greater. They saw a girl burdened with memory become a voice for change, and they listened. Weeks passed. On a new world, one without a name, a meeting was held. Not a council, not a throne, but a circle. Humans, aliens, former enemies. They came not to rule, but to speak. Dran and Saeli stood among them. No titles, no weapons, just themselves. Someone asked, "Who leads now?" Dran looked at Saeli. She answered, "No one leads. We walk together." And that was the beginning. Not of an empire, not of a crown, but of something better. The uncrowned had risen.